I'm sure you've heard of leasing before. It is essentially renting a car, but it's long term, right? Like you're signing you're making a commitment. So on your study sheet, you should have a leasing section, separate, like completely separate from everything you've done so far. Okay, it's very important that you don't mix them up. Okay, it is similar to renting, but it's for a number of you're signing an agreement. Leasing is an alternative to financing. That's very important. Leasing is an alternative. You're basically having payments on a regular basis, same as financing. But why do people still lease? Payments, write this down because this should stick. Payments on a lease are lower. Okay? That's why people choose to lease instead of financing it, because it's lower. Why is that? Well, if you buy it and then go to your bank, you're financing the entire car, the entire value of the car. Whereas if it's leasing, they only charge you for a portion of it, like what you're gonna use, right? So keep that in mind. Here are some things you need to highlight in this box, okay? There's something called a down payment. This is not taxed. You got to be very mindful. It's like a lien. Remember, a lien search isn't taxed. Same with the down payment. You don't get this one back. But they threw a curveball at us on the exam a couple of years ago. There's also something called security deposit. So okay, covers damages. So I don't know if you've ever heard of like when you rent, you need to put down a security deposit. I don't know if you've heard of that. In case you trash the place, they have money, like your landlord will use it to repair anything you've done to the walls or whatever. Same with a leased car. You may have to put down a deposit just in case you bring it back and your dog just destroyed the seats or something, right? Then they'll keep that and say, hey, we're going to keep that to, and obviously if it's more damages, then they take even more off your credit card, right? But just be mindful, security deposits are also there. You get it back, right? You get it back. That's probably important. If that ever shows up, don't worry about it. It's just another thing that you may be charged up front. Then you have your lease payment. It is per month in this unit, and it is taxed 12%. The term of the lease, right? It's the number of years or months you have to on the car and make payments. It's also known as the maturity date. The residual value, here I have to make a few changes. The adjusted price due to depreciation of the vehicle after the lease. It's the cost to buy the car at the end of the lease. You can highlight that. It's the cost to buy the car at the end of the lease, usually stated as a percentage, and it is calculated based on the initial value, the sticker price. I want you to get rid of this, the taxing portion there, because the province has changed their terminology. Make sure you can't see this anymore. Okay. Residual value is a percentage. So, example, the question could say that the residual value is 60%. What that means is that you'll pay 60% of what it was brand new. So you lease the car, you drive it around, you come back, you're like, I'm done with the lease. Right? But then they might say, hey, you want to buy it? You want to buy it? It's 60% of what it was brand new. So we will calculate that. Then there's something called the guaranteed residual value. You may ask, what's the difference between these two? This one is stated as like a fixed dollar amount. Okay, it's a fixed dollar amount. And so they say, hey, guaranteed, this is how much it's going to be at the end. Get rid of the taxing as well. Please get rid of it. We are going to tax it soon. And the next line here, I'm going to give it a different color because it's important. That's the new term right here, the buyout. It's the amount a person will have to pay for the vehicle after the leasing period is over. Taxes must be applied to the residual value. So as soon as you add taxes to the residual value, it's now called the buyout. Does that make sense? So we'll go 12% tax. I'll say this. If there are taxes when it comes to leasing, it's always 12% because you're always getting it from the dealer. Think about it that way, right? A big one, this one, different color yet. Mileage. This is the main reason why I would suggest you should never lease. There's something called a mileage cost. They actually have a restriction as to how much you can drive. Okay? There's a limit on the amount of kilometers you can drive. It can be stated as 10,000 kilometers per year, let's say. Or a 3-year lease allows for 60,000 kilometers. Okay. And this is taxed 12% as well. I will give you formulas that kind of take care of all of this, but you should still know. I'll just clarify this. Example, a 3-year lease with 60,000 kilometers, right, is the equivalent of 20,000 kilometers per year. Does that make sense? If you sign a contract with a 3-year lease for 60,000, it is the equivalent of 20,000 kilometers per year that you're allowed to drive. It may be crucial at points to understand the difference. So here are the formulas. This basically is, a lot of it is just comprised in those formulas that I'm about to give you. So let's go to 46. You need to have these on your study sheet. Okay. I will have a big heading here, leasing. You should always have a bit of a section for everything. So call this leasing and box in and I will tell you right off the bat that these two kind of go together. These deal with the mileage. So go ahead. Pay close attention. Look at the or here. Your number one task is going to be figure out how many kilometers over the limit that you go. So the best case scenario is you go kilometers you drove minus the allowance times the number of years. Or you'll just go kilometers driven minus allowance. You're like, what's the difference? This is what you use when it's just a fixed number. They just tell you, hey, you drive 60,000, that's it. You can't go over. This is when they give you the allowance as like kilometers per year. And if you're still scratching your head, I'll show you what the difference is in a bit. Then the mileage cost. So once you figure out this, then we figure out the cost. So we go kilometers past limit, which we figured out before, times the rate per kilometers. This is usually, right, dollars per kilometers. And then 1.12, that covers the tax, right? This part right here would be the taxes. So that would be it. That's mileage cost put away. Okay. Normally this is kind of on its own. They don't really mix it a whole lot with the lease. Next, if they ask you for total payments, total lease payments, you can wedge in lease, because you might mix this up with your other payment, like the loans. Don't mix them up. So total lease payments, you just take payment times the number of months times 1.12. And by payment, I mean, right, this will be a dollar amount. Times the months times 1.12, you got taxes. And then you get your, I'm going to use a color. This is very common, this one right here. Like figure out how much the lease will have cost you. There are three components. The down payment has no tax. Notice that nothing is multiplying it, right? Then you go plus payment times 1.12 times months. What does this look like? This is exactly the same as this top line here. This would be all of the payments you've made. So I call this total lease payments. This part right here. And the mileage cost, you will simply bring it in. If they ask for it, you just tack that on. So these three components make up your total lease. I didn't do the, if there's a security deposit, honestly folks, you would have to add it to this. So I'm just going to leave it like that. And we're assuming this already has been taxed, right? Because if you did your mileage cost up here, you multiplied it by 1.12. Okay. So residual value, I'm going to make a change here as well. This right here is the buyout. So it's used to be the residual value. Just go buyout. We're going to cross this all out like that and call this buyout. And off to the side here, I'm going to go like this. Residual value is going to be the price times a percentage divided by 100. Right? So if they give you a percentage here, you're going to figure that out and then plug it in here. Leasing can get messy, but if you're careful with your formulas, you can just navigate this page and then you figure it out. So now, total cost of the lease, including the purchase, would be your total lease cost, which you found up here. I will highlight that the same color. Plus buyout. So that's where it gets messy. They changed it not too long ago, and I have already changed it on my, but I had ordered the prints for this already. So total lease plus the buyout is the entire lease including purchase. This one is rare, okay? This formula is very rare, that they ask you to figure out the lease and add the buyout to it. But if I do ask you for it, there it is. Okay. Just don't double tax it, because by the time you just add these two, you've already added any taxes that belong to the component here. Okay, I want to do a question with you, and then I'll let you kind of struggle through it a little bit, and I'll just keep going with it tomorrow, okay? So let's go to 49. Got it? So just hang in there with this example, okay? A minivan sells with an MSRP, that's just the manufacturer's suggested retail price. So that's the price new. When it's brand new, this is what it costs. And it's leased at $479 per month plus tax. So it's telling you you're gonna have to add taxes to it. It's a 24-month term. There's a down payment required. Some leases do not require a down payment. So if it's not mentioned, it's 0. And watch this. The residual value of the vehicle is 62% of the MSRP. More on this soon, okay, on one of these questions here. Calculate the total payments, right? The total payments amount after tax, okay? So it's just total lease payment. So sometimes you have to kind of see which formula makes sense. And some of you just use common sense, and others are going to look for the formula. I say a payment times the number of months times 1.12. That will make sure that taxes get added. So this would be 479 times 24 months times 1.12. And that gives you $12,875.52. I should probably mention this. Sometimes the province has given years here. If it's 3 years, I hope you all know, just multiply that by 12 to get 36, right? So just read carefully. That's all. Those will be all my payments. Okay. Now it says, calculate the total cost of the lease. Total cost of the lease. That is, if you go back to 46, that's where the formulas are. There's total lease cost right there. I highlighted it in pink. Total lease cost. That's what it's calling for. And you want the down plus total payments plus mileage, correct? Those are the three components that usually make up a lease. And obviously, if there would be some damages or whatever, you would add it to this, of course. But there's no mileage charge here. So just get rid of that. We do have a down payment, correct? It's $1,500. So you just go $1,500. Do not add taxes to it. And total payments, it's that one right there. And I'm going to highlight that because this one came in here. Okay. So you're wondering, it's like, okay, is this already taxed, folks? We know because of the 1.12 up here. So don't be taxing again. So when this says after tax, don't worry about it. You've already included taxes. So in this case, it's just 14,375.52. After tax, okay, including tax. We're almost there. Here's where terminology is going to be a problem again. Calculate the total residual value of the minivan after tax or plus tax. Remember, it means the same thing. We call this the buyout. They want the buyout. Asking for buyout. How do you know it's buyout and not residual value? What's the difference? Taxes. Taxes make it so you go from residual value to buyout as soon as you add taxes. That's it. That's the only difference. So we'll first figure out the residual value, and that is 28,500 is brand new. You just multiply it by 62% over 100. Let me just grab my calculator here. 'Cause I have it slightly different. So it's 62 divided by 100 times 28,500. 17,670. This is the residual value. Now we're going to do the buyout. You take 17,670 and times 1.12. Right, this is your taxes here. So we just take that number times 1.12, and there it is, 19,790 and 40 cents. So if my questions don't mention buyout, they say, hey, find the residual value after tax, it is actually asking for this. If you understand that that's what's happening, you're doing fine, okay? And D is the one that's rare, but I'm not going to say it's never going to show up. Calculate the total cost of leasing. Right? This was done in B already. And buying the car out at the end of the lease. This part right here we did in part C. This is just saying, hey, if you combine the lease and the buying, how much would that have cost you at the end of the day? So I'm just going to go 14,375.52 plus 19,790 and 40. That is a whopping 34,165 and 92 cents. So if you could at least get started, I'm not going to ask you to do 50 because that one has mileage, and that always throws students off. I'm thinking, hold on. I'm thinking. I'm going to ask you to go to page 54 for now. That's all I'm going to assign. It's not a whole lot. One of the questions has mileage on it, but I know some of you are up for that challenge, so I'll let you struggle with that a bit. Thank you guys. I'll post the key.